Light Sword.
Guess what my favorite early arcade game is? Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong was the first successful arcade game by Nintendo, but it certainly wasn't the first. In fact, a Radarscope came out before Donkey Kong, and that was by Nintendo in the arcades.
Nintendo's first arcade machine, the submarine game, was didn't do so well. Actual total failure.
Knowing that they needed to try something different, the company president Hiroshi Yamauchi had Shigeru Miyamoto design a game that they could convert those old unsold copies of Radarscope into.
Actually, I was hired to run the warehouse, and the biggest chore initially was to take all of the Radarscope arcade games, we had 2,000 of them, big refrigerator-sized boxes, and convert them all over to Donkey Kong.
Most Donkey Kong arcades are light blue in color, but every once in a while you come across one that might be a red in color, and that's simply just an old Radarscope cabinet that they retrofitted into a new Donkey Kong arcade machine.
And those red cabinets are probably some of the rarest arcade cabinets you can get, actually.
A lot of people kind of wonder what Donkey Kong means, what the meaning behind it. Now, the influence with Donkey Kong, Shigeru Miyamoto admitted that the big influence for Donkey Kong was Beauty and the Beast and Popeye. In fact, Nintendo was trying to go after the Popeye franchise and they couldn't, so they decided to create their own characters.
He was trying to come up with some sort of synonym for stubborn monkey, this stubborn monkey. And looking up English words, he saw donkey. It's kind of a synonym because donkeys are stubborn, and made that direct translation a little strange, but sure, it's a donkey. It's a donkey monkey.
You know, they just basically Donkey Kong was going to be like crazy ape.
That's a stubborn monkey. You stubborn monkey. You're a Donkey Kong, aren't you?
Now people look at Donkey Kong and say, you know, it's a Mario game, but back then, the guy was just known as Jumpman. You know, he wasn't Mario. Mario wasn't even around then.
Yeah.
And you weren't saving Princess Peach in the game. You were saving his, I guess it was his girlfriend, Pauline.
Jumpman was renamed Mario, which we all love today. Mario was actually named Mario because it was the name of the Nintendo landlord at the time.
Not only was his original name not Mario, he wasn't the fun-loving plumber that we know and love today. He was actually a carpenter, and Donkey Kong was his pet, who he had mistreated, which is why Donkey Kong busted out of his cage and started kidnapping Pauline all the time.
If I was a pet gorilla locked up too, I would get revenge on my owner by kidnapping his girlfriend. So I don't see what the big deal is, throwing down, you know, barrels at Jumpman. Screw you, Jumpman. This is what you get. I'm gonna take your girl.
You shouldn't have had a pet gorilla in the first place.
One of the, I think, the biggest things that drew people in is it was the first game to technically have a story to it.
It starts off with a beginning of the story, and it proceeds into the action, and then there's actually an ending to the story. You know, that sort of narrative structure, which is present in most video games today, again, did not exist before he introduced it with Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong was one of the very first platforming games. Space Panic came out before that, but it actually introduced jumping to video games, something we do to this day. Jump.
Oh, I thought you meant play video games.
No, jump. Like,
okay.
If you climb up the ladder, the barrel is going to come down the ladder. If you try to avoid it, then the barrel is just going to travel. It's going to drop down, and it's going to come over, and it's going to kill you.
There's 4 separate screens in the arcade version of Donkey Kong. Now the one, Cement Factory, Mud Pies, whatever you want to call it, is omitted from almost every home port of the game, including all of Nintendo's official ports. But that's kind of unheard of for back then. A lot of times you saw maybe some slight maze changes, or just a repeating screen that got faster and harder. But no, there's distinct separate levels.
You gotta kind of memorize the little quirks of the game, you know. There are certain ways you can just barely, you know, catch the edges of barrels and so forth, and you're just instantly dead.
Donkey Kong is hard. It's really, really difficult.
When I see like Weeby and Mitchell play Donkey Kong, I'm like, screw you. Go to hell. How can you play that good? It's ridiculous!
Construction, or the conveyor belts in the Pies level.
Yeah,
that was probably the first time we all cursed out a conveyor belt.
And that screws you because the first wave, you don't see that level.
No.
So when you get to it, you're like, what the hell is this? And you don't know what to do. So you gotta know exactly how to time those jumps, when to leave that hammer be, when to climb up the ladders, when to give up and go play Pac-Man.
Shut up! Shut up! I don't have the life for that. I want to go take a bath.
Well, I don't like to gloat, but There was a competition between Joey, Pat, and I at MagFest, and Joey falsely claimed that he won, but I have a picture photo proof of that I won the competition.
I was there. He's telling the truth.
I did it. I got it done.
There was a big lawsuit between Universal Studios and Nintendo.
Doesn't Donkey Kong, didn't they rip off King Kong? Shouldn't we be suing them at this point?
Universal Studios felt there was a copyright infringement with King Kong and the trademark they had there.
Here we are, Universal Studios, we're huge. Here is this little company. It's not the Nintendo of today, it's this little company with a handful of employees. We're gonna go in, we're gonna sue them, and they're gonna be so scared that they're gonna give us a piece of this Donkey Kong action is what's gonna happen.
The stupidest part on Universal is this. Okay, so King Kong comes out in the 30s, and then Universal wants to do a remake in 75, right? And RKO Pictures says, no, you can't do that. And Universal successfully argues in 75, 6 years beforehand, that it is in the public domain.
They find out that Universal did not actually own any copyrights to King Kong.
6 years later, they have the balls to go and tell Nintendo that they own something that they don't.
Long story short, Nintendo won, and also Universal found out they didn't own the rights to King Kong. Oopsie.
And guess who won the case for Nintendo? A little lawyer by the name of Kirby. I wonder if Nintendo, kind of paid tribute to that by making a game character out of him.
Maybe.